Hello, thanks so much for joining me once more. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. Today I'm going to do a deep dive into the transit of Mars through the sign of Aries, which begins on the 28th of June at 2:48 a.m. Universal Central Time and goes on until the 6th of January 2021. So it's over 6 months. Now, ordinarily, Mars goes through each zodiac sign in about 60 days. So this is a big change. We haven't had this retrograde occur since 2018 in the summer. And the other thing that makes this retrograde of Mars so fascinating is that Mars is in its home zone of Aries, where it's dignified. Now, if you're new to my channel, I'd be honoured if you would subscribe. Also, if you'd like to chat with me directly, you can do so on Twitter at Horoscope Ace, or please join Elisa and I for the Daily Astrology and Spirituality Show, which is proving great fun, really popular, and you can grab your free daily horoscope every single day. Please see the link beneath this video. Now, as usual, what I'm going to do is set the scene in terms of the event. So what is the birth chart of when Mars moves into Aries? Now, a little bit different with today because of the way my software works with Filmora, which I use to record. It means that the wheel tends to dominate the screen. So I'm going to actually cut and paste the wheel into the video. But I can tell you that when Mars moves into Aries, it's directly opposite the moon. It's almost exactly opposite the moon in Libra. The moon in Libra is very much about being in balance. It's about relationships. Yet Mars in Aries is about initiation. It's about action. It's about drive. It's about living in the moment. It's about passion, desire. And so what I feel that the day chart is saying to us, that in the months ahead, we may at times have to reconcile our need for what we want as individuals with what other people want from us. Actually, Mars in this chart is in the 11th house of society and friendship, which is encouraging. Also, it forges a very positive link to Saturn, the planet of structure, in a way which is quite stabilizing. However, intercepting the opposition between Mars in Aries and the moon in Libra is the Sun in Cancer at 6 degrees. So we do have a T-square. What does this mean? I think with the Sun having broadly been in a square with Mars since the 24th of May, we have seen a lot of friction. That friction has manifested itself in different ways. When Mars was in the subterranean Pisces, we've seen very repressed energies and injustices explode to the surface through the voice of Gemini. Obviously, Cancer is very much more to do with the home and emotions. So as much as we may want to live out our urges to be individuals with Mars in Aries, I think the whole of this 6-month period is going to be characterized by a need to be conscious of the impact our own behavior has on others. So that's really the backdrop of energy from the event chart. But in terms of the movement of Mars through Aries, I want to explore what you feel Mars is about for you. I mean, it also is, of course, the co-regent of Scorpio, where it also has its modern ruler of Pluto, which is about transformation. And in Scorpio, it's a lot to do with intimacy and our desires at a very deep level. But Mars in Aries is kind of like a fresh energy. It's the beginning of the story of the Western zodiac. And of course, when it enters into Aries, it is on the Aries point, or the vernal point, which is a critically important point. So as it powers its way into this sign, coming out of where I feel it's been very repressed in the sign of Pisces, I think we could see some extra movement, things going forwards with a greater pace. Also, through to the 25th of July, there's a great link between the Mars in Aries and Venus in Gemini. And of course, Venus in Gemini is out of out of retrograde, although still in shadow. But that combination between the two points towards a lot more social interaction, which sounds really encouraging. But we are, of course, going to have a 10-week or just under a 10-week retrograde. It begins on the 9th of September and it finishes on the 13th of November. But the critical thing about Mars's journey through Aries, it forges that great link with Venus, which could see July be quite a romantic month, but it does, by the last 10 days of the month, forge a much more a harsher and more brittle right angle with Mercury, which of course is going through its own very long 10-week transit through the sign of Cancer, where it's not particularly happy. So I feel that the desire to have our needs met in a very direct and immediate way is going to come into conflict with the more emotional responses that Mercury struggles to transmute in its journey through the sign of Cancer. So that's a bit of a warning period, that last 10 days, despite the previous gorgeous, romantic and very desirable angle between Venus and Mars for the previous part of July. Now, in August, in weeks 2 and 3, there is going to be a fantastic link between the Sun and in Leo and Mars in Aries. But at that point, Mars is actually going to, or the Sun, sorry, is going to be in its last decan, which means, and that's governed by Mars, so that could be a really exciting period of time, weeks 2 and 3 in August. But we can't get away from the fact that in August, September and the first 2 weeks of October, Mars is actually in a right angle with Saturn. Now Saturn is back in the sign of Capricorn, rewinding. It's going to get closer to Pluto, and I think that the potential for financial insecurity in terms of the stock market or a second spike in many areas as far as COVID is very high. I can only be frank about that. And part of the reason why this could happen is that Mars is very much about uncontained energy. It's very much to do with our masculine impulse. It's about having it now. It's not about analysing the rights and wrongs of situations. It's about instant action. And with Saturn being in, well, both are in their dignity, Mars in Aries and Saturn in Capricorn, you kind of get a handbrake on the engine of Mars. So we're driving the car, but the handbrake is on, so the car does move, but it creates a tremendous amount of carbon and resistance because of Saturn's more limiting energies. And of course Saturn in Capricorn is very much about the old order, whereas Mars in Aries is about the new order. It's about wanting to get society as we'd like it to be now, particularly because on that day chart it was in the 11th house of the collective. So I feel that there is definitely going to be some big challenges coming the way of society generally across August, September and the first 2 weeks of October. Also, we're going to see in weeks 2 and 3 of August a square with Pluto. And when Mars and Pluto are not in a great angle like this, it can lead to sort of quite jarring impulses. So we could have clashes of a physical nature, or we could encounter someone who has an approach to management which is very much a might is right, telling us how it will be rather than in a more consensual sense. And we also need to be conscious of our own behaviour. It's not just about how we perceive society, it's how we actually create society ourselves. So that's an interesting thing to be conscious of. But there is on the 16th of October a new moon which occurs in Libra. But this is a very important new moon because it forges a opposition to Mars in Aries and a right angle to the conjunction between Saturn and Pluto. And it's going to provide an energy, a backdrop for the following month, but I do feel that we're going to perhaps have a shakeout then in that month from the 16th of October, which could give us some clues on how we're going to come back out of the COVID crisis. And also, from the 12th of December right through to when Mars moves into the sign of Taurus, which will occur on the 7th of January, once more the Sun, because of coming out of the retrograde, it goes back into the clash with Pluto. So as much as we can think about Mars being very go-getting, it's very inspirational in a way. It's about defending our position. It's about our preservation of our lives. It's about fighting for what we feel we're worth. It can be greatly about sexual energy in Aries in a kind of fresh way, and has that lovely angle to Venus for much of July. But generally speaking, the desire to be individualistic is definitely going to meet the old world order, which was very top-down management, but we could therefore see a big rebellion continuing to gain pace, really, in terms of creating a new reality where people feel is more inclusive. And of course, once we have the solar eclipse of the 14th of December, which is in Sagittarius, it forges an amazing link to Mars. And then we have both Saturn on the 17th of December, followed by Jupiter on the 20th of December, come together in a conjunction on the 21st of December. And we have Venus going through the sign of Sagittarius in the last month of this year. And then as we go into 2021, and also Mercury moving into Aquarius, I feel we're going to see a big change coming. And there has to be some alteration. The desire for big corporations or big governments or big data to control people is going to be something that I feel that people are going to find more uncomfortable. And of course there will be other people battling hard to maintain the status quo as they saw it, which suited them, and there will be much more outspoken voices trying to find and establish a new reality that they feel is fitting with their own fresher, more in the present needs. Now, in terms of each zodiac sign, how does this play out? Well, there's no doubt about it. If you are an Aries, Mars sweeping its way through your sign for 6 months, I think is broadly helpful. The fact that it had been going through for the previous 6 weeks, the sign of Pisces, is not great, because that is a 12th house passage for you. It's probably evoked quite a lot of psychological energies. So moving into your own sign is very much about fresh beginnings. But if you have experienced some real frustrations around your career or work, perhaps through COVID, there may need to be some kind of reset that goes on in the second half of 2020 that prepares you to explode into 21 in a much more enterprising way. Now, Taurus, for you, this transit could actually be quite tricky. I can only be truthful with you, because Mars is going to be in your 12th solar house. So Mars has a tendency in this area to stir up unresolved angers and hurts, or we may have a kind of reconnection to an influential person from our past. This could be in our memory, or it could be in actual reality. This person could be a force for good, or maybe we need to process those unresolved angers that are still outstanding. What you can do is to use Mars to your advantage, to fall back on any past skills or experiences, to repackage them in the present in a more relevant way. So that can be very positive for you. Now, Gemini, with having Mars in your sector of friendship and your long-term future, this is generally very helpful to you. But what you're going to be challenged with in the second half of this year is, what do you believe in? What are your values in terms of how you earn a living, your connection to others? If you have friendships or connections to group situations which no longer seem to fit your inner reality when it comes to those values, you may decide to let go of some quite long-standing associations or friendships. But new friendships and associations can come in that are really exciting. Now, Cancer. Mars moving through this area is actually quite fabulous for you because it gives you the chance to raise your vibration, to be much more assertive and self-confident. If you're looking for greater recognition for your talents, this is a great time to go for it, but not if you're not conscious of how your goals and ambitions impact on the people that you're closely allied to. So relationships are going to be very important. You have to juggle the two areas. Now for you, Leo, having Mars in the 9th house is a supreme irony at this time. If it wasn't for COVID, it would give you a fantastic push to open up your world in a very physical way, because of course Aries is very much about the physique and action. And if you can't travel wherever you are in the world, then I think what you can do is expand your thinking, expand your knowledge, learn a foreign language, take a course, decide to do something that informs you for when you can break out in a more adventurous way. But one of the things you're going to be confronted with in the second half of this year is balancing your need to be a free individual with your obligations. And there can definitely be some grind points at times where there is frustrations that you can't be quite the free spirit you may wish to be. Now, Virgo, having Mars in this area is super hot when it comes to intimacy. If you're fortunate enough to be able to connect with someone and meet them, it could be hot, hot, hot. But equally, in a long-standing or already established relationship, the clash that goes on with Saturn means that if your romantic instincts or desires and needs are different from the person you really fancy, there's going to be the potential for conflict. So that's going to be the rub for you. Now Libra, obviously having Mars in your opposite sign is going to give you a much greater desire to firm up your boundaries. Good for you, because as I've kept saying over the last few years, especially with Neptune in such a self-sacrificing area, and of course then you had Uranus making its way through Aries, being firmer about balancing your desire to be a people pleaser with the need to look after your needs is something that's crucially important. And you may have to be a bit firmer around someone who's quite close to you. It could be a family member who's quite demanding, and that's where you may say enough is enough. But also this can be a time for you to be much more engaging and competitive in terms of your talents. Go for it, you can do it. Now Scorpio, of course, Mars is in quincunx for you in this location at 150 degrees, so not ideally located, but for you essentially it's about work, health, fitness, diet. Now Uranus had been stirring up that area for 7 years until it finally moved on March the 19th of 2019 back into Uranus, back into Taurus. So you've had a kind of taste of this part of your situation being aroused, but if the changes that you tried to make haven't quite stuck, perhaps due to COVID, this is an opportunity to go for it. But you could experience quite a lot of nervous tension in the second half of this year if you don't have a plan and stick to a workable, proportionate plan where you pick off the things that are most important first. If you try to do too much, juggle too much, you'll end up feeling a little bit spent. So look after your nervous system, get plenty of rest and exercise. Now Sagittarius, having Mars in your 5th solar house is absolutely glorious. It's about as good as it can get. This is about your passion, your joys, your self-expression, your creativity, your love life. What's not to like? Well, one of the things you shouldn't be doing in the second half of this year is spoiling anyone that doesn't really appreciate how generous you can be. Or if there is a relationship, particularly with a child or a romantic partner, where your values are not quite aligning, this is something that you really need to talk through between you during this period of time. For you, Capricorn, it's about the home. And you may want to make some physical changes. That could be changing the bathroom, upgrading your kitchen. It could be about moving altogether if that's possible. It may be about changing your space around, doing some decorative changes, starting a home-based business. But all of this needs to take into account balancing your need to be absolutely an individual. And if you find yourself sacrificing that too much for what those closest to you expect or want from you, that could make you resentful. So that's going to be your challenge. Aquarius, Mars moving into Aries. It's all about quick moves. You could find yourself doing more thrusting, fast-moving exercises. And also you may find yourself wanting to chat more, interact with people more, communicate your message. It's going to be a busy time. There may be some kind of connection with a sibling. But equally, because of the continuing journey of Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto through your 12th house, you may find yourself saying things that have been suppressed or bottled up for a long time that need saying, but it doesn't mean to say the person you're saying it to will appreciate your candor. But somewhere or another, you may find that something that's been raking around in the depths of your subconscious may need to find an outlet. Which brings us, as always, but never last as least, is Pisces. And for you, Pisces, Mars moving through this area can give you a big appreciation of the good things in life, whether it's good food, good wine, calorific goodies. So you can see the challenge here could be, especially if we are in any kind of lockdown during the period of Mars's transit through Aries, that you could gain weight. So it's going to be important to be as active as possible. Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto are in your 11th house of your future. Are your core values changing? Although Mars in the second solar house can see you want to improve your finances, it can also see you becoming much more conscious of what you really stand for. And because of that collection of energy, the posse as I call them in Capricorn, they're very much about your higher values, whereas the second house is your core values. If something's out of kilter, you need to change it, but you may find that there are certain friends that you feel don't really hear where you're coming from as much as you might have thought they used to do. That's because you're changing, they're changing, the world's changing, and we all have to continually adapt. But I do feel that if you want to improve your financial lot, you can have a lot of desire to do that. So that brings us to the end of the Zodiac forecast for Mars's transit through Aries. I hope you've enjoyed being with me. If you want to ascend above your zodiac sign and learn about real astrology, you can see the link beneath this video where you can purchase my astrology reports, which are very affordable. You can grab yourself a 12-month forecast and a character analysis and get 30% off, although there's lots of other charts you can choose from. Or you can choose to have a one-to-one personal consultation with me. Please see my testimonials beneath this video. But for now, thank you so much for joining me. I'm wishing you well, stay safe, take care, and good luck.